Okay, and we are rolling live here for our final segment of the Envestnet Elevate Conference in Las Vegas. And we have with us Matt Hansan, who is the VP of Institutional Business Development. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be the last guest.
All right, well, I think it's a great way to close this out. And I got to tell you, I didn't know what you guys did.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I found out, I was really even more excited to talk about this because I think it's a really interesting concept. So we're going to talk about a very dirty word.
Yeah, yes we are.
Annuities.
I know.
Especially in the fiduciary world, very dirty.
Yes.
And I've had this conversation already multiple times with David Blanchett, a shared colleague of ours, friend, and I'm really excited about this technology. So I'm going to not take your thunder and let you explain what I mean by this and how annuities no longer have to be a dirty word for us fiduciaries.
It's funny because I'm actually not going to say the word annuity after I just said it there because we've rolled out what we're calling an insurance overlays marketplace where we're taking the benefits, the income protection benefits of an annuity, and we're actually going to allow advisors to wrap existing managed accounts or new managed accounts with the benefits of those solutions. So the assets are actually going to continue to stay where they are. The advisors continue to maintain all control of those assets. And as long as the insurance carrier, which Prudential is one of the initial carriers we're going live with, as long as they have a line of sight into what that advisor is managing and they're still within, what are the appropriate investment options, they're going to have full reign of flexibility to manage that as they do today. But now they're going to have that added protection and income based off of the underlying overlay that they're going to incorporate. So really excited about how we're essentially merging what has always been two bifurcated universes, right? You have the advisory management experience over here, you have your traditional annuities over here. We're truly bringing the best of both into one experience. And for the advisor, they're maintaining a lot of the benefits that they want with their managed accounts without having to kind of go towards that annuity, which I know is oftentimes seen as a bad word.
Yeah, I really, really like this technology. I really do. And I spoke and did a podcast actually with David Blanchett. Maybe we'll kind of tie in the link to this. Yeah. Where we were talking about this, and I was like, wow, this sounds really cool. And he told me that this concept has been around for some time, but I don't see anyone using it. Are you guys going to change this?
So it's a great point. A CDA, right, a contingent deferred annuity, is not new.
Right.
What's new is that you have now the connectivity and the unification of the managed account platforms, the asset managers, and then us as kind of this intermediary that connects us to the carriers so that they can have this real-time view into the accounts and appropriately hedge versus some of the restrictions that existed on maybe some existing CDAs that are a little bit more stringent into you have to be in these specific sectors or funds, right? Because then you're kind of going back towards, I'm stuck to these sub-accounts, I'm stuck to these crediting strategies. The goal here is to allow the advisor to keep the flexibility and management of their traditional day-to-day business without having to move the assets and then give them the added benefits of the protection and income strategies.
Right. So let's go a little bit into the weeds here because I really want the audience to understand what this is and why I'm actually pretty excited about this. So traditionally, if you wanted something like a guaranteed living benefit, guaranteed withdrawals, so on and so forth, all the stuff that lives in the annuity world, you would have to take the money from your custodian, Schwab, LPL, wherever your money is, and move it somewhere else into an annuity.
Correct.
Period. Now, you could have your own portfolio, manage it as you wish, and I'm sure some guardrails. I'm going to ask you some questions about that. Yeah. You can't just put it all in IBIT and be like, hope for the best. Yeah, that's not going to work. Clearly, there has to be some guardrails, and I'm going to be curious on how that works. Yeah. And then you guys are having some visibility. Is the advisor staying within the guardrails? If the advisor is staying within the guardrails on my portfolio, that could be, I guess, stocks, bonds, ETFs, mutual funds, whatever I want. You will provide that layer of income guarantee as if it was in an outside annuity.
Exactly. That's spot on, right?
So I think the beauty of all this is pretty evident, meaning I don't have to see my AUM go somewhere else. No one likes that. Right. I don't have to have it tied up. I don't have to fill out a whole application, do 1035 exchanges, all the stuff that advisors don't like to do.
Exactly.
Sounds great. Yeah. Let's talk about what we may not like. Yeah. What are the guardrails?
So the guardrails are really going to determine based off of each carrier. With Prudential, they've really taken an approach where they're trying to be as flexible as possible. There are things like cryptocurrency and inverse ETF funds that they are not going to feel comfortable, wrapping out of the gate. But for the most part, they're really trying to keep an open mind on what they can hedge, and then we're also looking at the ability to potentially wrap sleeves. Right, so if you have that $1 million portfolio, let's say you only want to wrap 40% of it or 30% of it for the income portion of the account. Well, then if you have any assets that are incorporated or that are ineligible, let's say, you could put those essentially in the outside of the wrapper.
Right.
And that way you could continue to manage those, continue to incorporate them in the client's overall portfolio, but then they don't have to be tied to what is actually then being hedged, right, by Prudential as a carrier. Every carrier is going to be different. So some carriers that we're talking to have a little bit of a different mindset, might have some more, rules around what they're requiring, because although we're going live with a CDA, with Prudential, there's going to be, I think, other chassis that carriers are going to use to bring this to life. Same sort of idea of keeping the assets where they are and just wrapping them with protection. Yeah. But every carrier's going to have their own little flavor. So that's my one caveat, which is don't know what we don't know.
So you guys are doing the facilitating, and the carriers are doing the risk management and coming up with the terms, and the guardrails and whatnot.
From a technology standpoint, our goal and our job is to really be in the middle between the wealth platforms and the asset managers and then the insurance carrier, so that the insurance carrier can continue to do what they do best, which is manage and insure that money. The advisors can continue to do what they do best, and the wealth platforms, which is bring assets on the platform, make sure they're sticky, and then we can be that facilitator that connects everything, right? We're going to be the ones that have a real-time API eligibility check to each carrier based off of the QSIPs that come in and say, hey, is this good to go? So that's how we're fitting in the middle to ensure that carriers don't have to build to 7, 8, 10 different platforms to roll this out. They can connect to us, we'll bring them to the different distributors, and then vice versa, right? As a distributor, you can connect to us and you're going to get all
I completely get that. I don't want to cut you off. I do want to be mindful of time, because I want to go back to what I think the audience is going to hear about. So the audience is really advisors. That's who we're talking to right now. So from that advisor, and I know it's going to be different from carrier to carrier, but let's have an example. So let's say I want to have a 5% guaranteed income benefit. What are, broadly speaking, generally speaking, or an example of what kind of guardrails? Can I go up to 80% equity? Can I go?
Yeah,
really?
100% equity. Yeah,
really?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I could run a 100% equity portfolio and have this guaranteed living benefit.
Yes.
Really?
It's the way I've thought about it and the way that we kind of talk to firms is this is helping advisors be more efficient with their systematic withdrawal strategy.
Sure, right.
So if you have this income base that you're pulling an annual income amount off of, so let's say it's 4%, it's based off of the benefit base of the account when you buy it. That benefit base is going to fluctuate with the market based off of what you're in. Yep. And so as you continue to draw down the actual account value, that benefit base is not going down with the withdrawals. So you're going to get to a point where your effective withdrawal rate creeps up from 4 to 5 to 6 to 10 to 15, where traditionally, behavioral finance says you would never, ever, take 20% out of a
because you're just
account.
taking that constant amount out.
Exactly.
And if the portfolio is down, that percentage is going up.
Correct.
Yep. Right.
But for, when you have this income rider essentially associated to it, you have, at the end of the day, when that managed account gets drawn down to 0, or let's just say the sleeve of income that you've kind of walled off, once that goes down to 0, that's when, specifically with Prudential and their product, that's when the income starts kicking in. Yep. So then they'll pay that last payment for the rest of the client's life. Yep. So you now have
at that predetermined amount.
It is based off of that last income payment. So
the last income payment.
Yeah, based off of the 4%, whatever that benefit base was, whatever 4% on that benefit base was at that point.
But this is probably best done on maybe.
I was going to say this is what the platform does. Right? It kind of outlines the benefits and shows you how it all works.
This definitely requires some visuals and some things. So,
does.
But I'm so curious. I'm asking all these questions.
Most people do. Yeah.
Let's end on this. So what are the economics? Sounds like a good value, but what is the cost of that value?
Yeah. So again, it's going to be per product. Every product's going to have their own kind of difference. I know Prudential's product is 1% out of the gate annual fee to have
of the total account value
of the account value that's being wrapped.
that's being wrapped. What if that value goes down? So let's say you're wrapping $1 million.
Yeah.
Between withdrawals and market depreciation, it goes down to $500,000.
Correct.
Am I paying 1% on $1 million or $500,000?
Half.
Really?
Yeah. So it'll continue to go down as the assets are drawn out of the account, as they should be, considering it's in the income phase at that point. So over time, right, that account will get closer and closer to zero, and that's the point.
Yeah.
Right. The whole point of it is supposed to be the income portion of the client's account.
I really like this concept, and I'm not a huge fan of annuities per se.
Yeah.
I think they have a place. And I think this is a good thing to think about for the situations where that guaranteed income is required. I do like it quite a bit, honestly.
We're really excited. We think that this is going to be a great opportunity to get to some of those advisors that traditionally have avoided annuities, either for the process or maybe they don't have the appropriate licenses, which is a whole other thing we can talk about. We do have the ability to support advisors that don't have insurance licenses by giving them access to our outsourced insurance desk. So we'll be the agent of record on these policies for an IAR, so they can continue to...
Is it considered an insurance policy?
It is. It's still technically an annuity. It's a contingent deferred annuity. So
got it.
Although we all don't love the word, that's why we're going with insurance overlays.
You know what? Annuities as a standalone are not bad.
No, absolutely not.
The problem is so many annuities have such high commissions, it's forcing, I think, sales that are done for the commission, not because it's a good fit. But there are a lot of people where it is a good fit, for sure.
Annuities are a really critical part of a client's portfolio. Right?
For some.
Yeah, for some. But I think there are some advisors that stay away from them without really looking at the benefits.
I agree with that.
And I think the goal with this is that we can help deliver the benefits and the value of an annuity, which we believe truly are critical, without having to go through some of those hoops that exist and make it really seamless for the advisor.
That sounds good. Well, that's a good place to put a pin in for this segment,
yes.
Which means we're putting a pin in Elevate 2025 here for Envestnet in Las Vegas. Thanks for joining us for this segment for the past 2 days worth of coverage. And next stop for me will be FPA NorCal in a few weeks, so we'll see you then. Thanks for joining us. And Matt, thanks for this information. It was great.
Thank you so much.
All right,
great.
you bet.